Mr. Elwell, as the safety agency entrusted to provide the safest, most efficient aerospace system in the world, the FAA must ensure that aviation safety is not a luxury that can be bought and sold for an extra fee. But for Boeing, critical safety features that could have saved the lives of 346 souls on 2 of their 737 MAX 8s were yet another profit center, deemed optional, like premium seats or extra bathrooms or fancy lighting. That's wrong, just plain wrong, Mr. Elwell. Boeing sold 2 safety features, the angle of attack indicator and the warning lights, to the airlines for an additional fee, not as a standard part of the aircraft. These features could have alerted the pilots and aviation mechanics that the doomed aircraft had faulty sensors, which preliminary findings suggest are the cause of these 2 aviation disasters. Let's be clear. In our automobiles, we don't pay more for seat belts, for airbags, or in medicine for child-proof caps. Those aren't optional. Those are all built in as safety features to protect people, to protect families. And so should all critical safety features on aircraft. Administrator Elwell, do you believe that Boeing's practice of selling the angle of attack indicator and warning lights as separate optional features may have contributed to the Lion Air and Ethiopian airline crashes? Yes or no?
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. The AOA indicator, the AOA vane is not an optional piece of equipment on the airplane. We look in the certification process that we've been using for decades, that we've refined over 130 times, is geared towards one thing: the safest possible aircraft.
Should all of these safety features been mandatory that could have alerted pilots and mechanics to issues with the sensors? Should they have been mandatory? Yes or no?
Senator, safety critical pieces of equipment on an aircraft are mandatory. That's what certification does. If it's safety critical.
So you don't think that they should have been mandatory? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you just said? They should not have been mandatory?
Sir, I'm saying that any
yes
safety
or no? Should they have been mandatory? Yes or no?
Sir, the distinction between what goes in a flight deck and what stays out is a discussion, and whether or not a display is safety critical or not is a distinction that FAA is qualified to make.
Do you believe that charging additional fees for these safety features and other safety features like backup fire extinguishers in the cargo hold and oxygen masks for flight crews may discourage airlines from equipping their airlines with important safety systems? Yes or no?
Well, Senator Markey, I find it hard to believe that a safety company like an airline would save a couple $1,000s on an option that might improve safety on a
it may be hard for you to believe, but it's happening. Mm-hmm. And as a result, the safety agency has a responsibility to make sure that an airline doesn't place
absolutely
profit over people's safety. Do you agree with that?
Senator Markey, I would tell you that
do you think the FAA has the responsibility to tell these airlines that they cannot shortchange safety for profits when it's clear that that safety device plays a huge role in protecting the plane and its passengers?
Senator
yes or
Markey,
no?
that is our fundamental responsibility.
Yes or no? Should that be mandatory?
Senator Markey, the fundamental role of the FAA is to determine what the safety critical aspects of every part on that airplane.
Should the FAA ban the practice of airlines selling safety features a la carte to the airlines? Yes or no?
Senator Markey, I will tell you that if there is any manufacturer that sells a safety critical part a la carte, we will not permit it.
Well, if you change the rules so that they cannot do this, then that will be progress. But if business as usual continues, then passengers are going to continue to be vulnerable. So from my perspective, safety should never be a la carte. Safety should never be optional. Safety should always be mandatory. And that's why I have sent a letter with 16 of my colleagues to Boeing demanding that they never again have any safety option as something that is discretionary with their own profit model. It is absolutely unacceptable. And it's unacceptable for the FAA to delegate to an airline what is safe, what is not, what they can afford, what they cannot. This should not be an option. Seatbelts, airbags, or whatever in an airline should never be optional. So my view is that until the FAA finally stands up and says that this is something that must change, then we are going to have problems, big problems. And that's why I'm introducing legislation with my colleagues to ensure that this never happens again, and that when something is determined to be a safety feature, that it no longer is an option for the airline to include it, or else we will just continue to see continued repetition of what is happening, because ultimately, overconfidence breeds complacency, and complacency breeds disaster. We've seen it here, and we'll see it again unless we mandate safety as something which is not optional. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.